Review of the new year. This time we will be talking about the much beloved final chapter of the new Star Wars trilogy, Star Wars Rise of the Skywalker. Now, 2 years ago I made a review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. I pulled up the video here to watch so I could get a refresher of what I said about it. What my thoughts were 2 years ago, and kind of talk about how they've changed, because I want to talk about Rise of Skywalker as a movie, and I want to talk about Rise of Skywalker as the conclusion of a 3-part trilogy, and how it reflects the larger Star Wars universe. I said in my Last Jedi review, which has 20 views and 1 dislike, so clearly somebody did not like my opinion, and I mean, that's fine. I said that I really loved The Last Jedi, but that I wanted to rewatch it again so I could decide whether it was my favorite Star Wars movie. And I basically said like 10 times in this video, oh, I'm not going to talk spoilers because I'm going to do an in-depth spoiler video later. I never did an in-depth spoiler video later. I haven't even watched Last Jedi again. And, you know, I'm starting to realize, I think The Last Jedi is on Netflix still. So, honestly, I have no excuse for not having watched it. And I think it ultimately comes down to, as much as I liked the Luke, Rey, Kylo parts of the movie, the other parts are such a drag that I don't want to watch the movie again. I thought I would, but I just didn't ever want to watch it. I've still only seen The Last Jedi the one time. And I feel like if I watched it again, now, knowing how the series ends, I would have a much more downer view on it. I don't think I'd be as positive on it as I was before. And even in the review I made of it, I'm not that positive. So I think I may have just been a little too... Sorry. I need some water before I go on the ramble. The rant review. Star Wars. I still think the reactions to Star Wars are so overblown. I spend the first, 5 minutes of this video talking about how people take Star Wars too seriously, and I feel like that's probably where the dislike comes from. I don't think I worded that the best. Given another 2 years to, look back on it, I'd say it's not so much that people take Star Wars too seriously. It's more that the original trilogy is just it's a little overhyped, and I think the series in general, it's more that people just have such high expectations of Star Wars, except now they don't. That's the funny thing. Things have, changed. Last Jedi, and really just more than anything, the internet discourse around it kind of killed that. Or maybe it's not even Last Jedi. I feel like it might just be the general commercialization of Star Wars. Like, the fact that mere months after Last Jedi came out, they made Solo, and then Solo just kind of bombed, and it's just people don't care. Star Wars doesn't have that specialness to it when there's so much content for it being made. And I think that's a larger Star Wars issue that's not necessarily caused entirely by the quality of the new trilogy, but the new trilogy's, I'm just going to say it, the new trilogy's incoherent storytelling does not help. I was not real hyped for the Rise of Skywalker, because as much as I loved The Last Jedi, most of the things The Last Jedi did that I thought were so interesting were just Rian Johnson undoing and subverting the expectations created by J.J. Abrams. So then I find out they get J.J. Abrams back on for the 9th movie, and it's just well, at this point, you're playing ping pong with the plot. And that's what it felt like. It felt like it was having to cram a trilogy of movies into... Well, I mean, I knew that's what it was going to feel like. Honestly, I didn't hate Rise of the Skywalker. I've seen a lot of people say they hate it. And I've seen a lot of people say they love it, too. Usually those are the same people that hated Last Jedi. Because a lot of what it does is Last Jedi crowd control. Force Awakens. I love Force Awakens. It's super nice, but it's very safe. I don't really remember it now, 4 years out. Last Jedi took some things in some bold new directions, for better or for worse. Some people liked some of those directions, some people didn't like any of those directions, some people maybe liked all of those directions, even the stuff with Rose and Finn and Poe, you know, the parts I'm not really into. And then Rise of Skywalker comes and pretty much is just like, oh shoot, people didn't like the Luke stuff in The Last Jedi, the whole gray, it's not so dark and light with the Force, which I thought was really something that I felt like evolved Star Wars as a concept. Doing things like making Rey a nobody whose parents aren't even things like killing Snoke, which I know is a big contingent point for some people. I felt like killing Snoke may not have been the best idea. I will concede that. But like a lot of those big things are like, when people say it betrays Luke's character, I disagree. I think it's an interesting, he was never like the perfect hero. He was always flawed. I absolutely buy the idea that he like screwed up and he feels bad about it and he's hiding on the island. And I feel like some of his ideas about the Jedi and the Sith weren't even wrong. Some of the ideas that Last Jedi even kind of suggest are wrong, but Rise of Skywalker literally has a scene, spoilers, I'm gonna spoil the movie in this video, because I figure either you have seen the movie already, or you haven't seen it because you're sick of Star Wars and you don't care about spoilers. So if you are somebody who still hasn't seen it and cares about spoilers, stop watching now, because I'm gonna go into spoilers. Okay, there's a scene in Rise of the Skywalker where Luke's Force Ghost literally shows up and is like, I was wrong, Rey, I was wrong. You're a Jedi, you're the last Skywalker. You take on the Skywalker lineage, and it's like, that kills the whole point of The Last Jedi. But I knew it was going to do stuff like that. I came in with pretty low expectations, what with the critic reviews and, you know, the way that I knew it was going to retcon a lot of my favorite parts of of Last Jedi. And I actually came out pleasantly surprised. I feel like they wrapped it up as well as they could, given the complete lack of a coherent plan for this trilogy of movies. Like, you don't put Rian Johnson, as much as I love what Rian Johnson did, you don't have him make the middle movie of a trilogy and then have another guy make the front and end movies of the trilogy and let the middle guy just, like, mess with everything. Like, if you want to, like, I'd love to see what Rian Johnson will do with Star Wars, and I've heard he's getting his own trilogy, and I'm excited for that. I want to see what he does with his own story, not jumping in the middle of somebody else's story, switching everything up, and then the other guy comes back and fixes it all. But considering how much of a mess all of that is, I honestly feel like they did a good job. And as time goes on from me seeing the movie, the less I feel like they did a good job, but I can't bring myself to hate it. No, there's nothing in the new trilogy that is as, like, purely unwatchable as, say, Anakin Padme scenes in the prequels. There's nothing that horrible. It's just, if the worst crime the new series makes is just being too safe. With Episode 7 and with Episode 9. With Episode 8 was not too safe. Episode 8 was, like, kind of out there, and I think there were some blunders in Episode. Not having all the characters together was a blunder. Like, one of my friends pointed out to me, Rey and Poe literally never share any scenes before Episode 9. Now, I haven't fact-checked that to see if it's true, but, like, it sounds true. I don't recall them ever really meeting. If so, they only met very briefly. Because each movie has had its own, like, self-contained story that doesn't really bring the characters together. The characters don't really have proper arcs. Finn gets a new freaking love interest every movie. In Episode 8, it's Rose. There's kind of a thing with him and Rey in Episode 7 that continues through. But then Episode 8 has him and Rose, which was a failure. The way they write Rose out of the movie is so funny. There's literally a scene where Finn comes up and is like, hey Rose, you want to come with us on our adventure? And Rose is like, no, Leia's having me do X bullshit task, so I'm going to stay behind. And Finn's like, oh, okay. And then she's in like 2 more scenes after that. I feel bad for the actress, but then in this movie they introduce another new character who's also like a fled stormtrooper, and then Finn has a thing for her, and they seem to have some kind of chemistry, but it's just like, I don't care. But I also feel like because of the fact that they have no movies to build relationships off of, Finn, Rey, and Poe, I have trouble even remembering their names, Jesus. Finn, Rey, and Poe have, like, no chemistry. They're always bickering in the movie. At one point, I literally leaned over to my friend and said, "Wow, God, why are they always bickering?" And she was like, "They're just tense." But friends don't bicker like that. It didn't feel like how friends bicker. It felt like how people who barely know each other and are being forced to work together bicker. It just didn't, like, the arguing scenes didn't land for me. And, like, Poe gets practically zero. This new trilogy seems to have a tendency to replace characters meeting old friends or new friends with character development. Like, new character encounters does not equal character development, not necessarily. Because there's a friend that is there's an old friend of Poe's that is introduced in Rise of the Skywalker, but she's such an insignificant character. You literally never even see her face all the way. Like, she has a mask on and she never takes it off all the way. Like, what was the point of her character? Why was she in the movie? Why did we waste time with her when we could have spent time building the bond between Rey and Finn and Poe? And I kind of liked her character. She was a cool character. But it's just like, why are you throwing her in now? Why is she showing up now, 3 movies into this trilogy, when we don't have time to be introducing new characters and new worlds? Like, they just keep introducing new stuff on top of new stuff, and they'll probably just expand on it all in the comics that apparently explain what the Knights of Ren are and how Snoke was connected to Palpatine. I was just like, why? Just put it in the movies. It shouldn't be that. If they had a plan from the beginning, they could have put it in. They could have put it to work in the movies. And man, this did kind of turn into a rant. But it's not a rant of the series as a whole. Because I feel like none of the new movies on their own are bad enough to really rant about. Like, Rise of the Skywalker got low critic scores. What did it get? Hold on. I'm going to search it real quick. Just see what the Rise of Skywalker. There we go. Rise of Skywalker. 54 on Rotten Tomatoes. 54. What? Babu Frick spinoff? Okay, stop reading these things. Like, Rise of the Skywalker is a 54% on Rotten Tomatoes. Whereas, like, the previous 2 films, even Last Jedi, the one that got a lot of hate, is, hold on. Last Jedi. Last Jedi has a 91. And I believe Force Awakens, I'm not going to look it up, but I believe Force Awakens also has... What is... Oh my God, I'm getting distracted by a news article. Star Wars Rise of Jedi... Okay, shut up, Forbes. I'm trying to record a review. The Last Jedi also got... Force Awakens and Last Jedi both got 90-something% Rotten Tomatoes scores. Rise of Skywalker gets like a 50-something. I don't feel like that movie is any more deserving of a 50-something than, the previous 2 movies. I mean, I think it is easily the worst of the 3, but I think the task of, like, as a movie by itself, not thinking about the larger continuity, it honestly holds up fine. You're introduced to these characters, you see them go on a journey, some of them go through character arcs, but as a conclusion to a trilogy, it's the best they could do after bungling up the first 2 and not giving themselves enough coherent... Really, they needed 2 more movies. Like, if they were going to do this and have Last Jedi, they should have just made 2 more movies afterward. That would have given everybody the time. But they shouldn't have needed 2 more movies. Because The Last Jedi... I hate to say it, but either, like, J.J. Abrams should have never been on the project in the first place, or he should have been on all 3 movies. As much as I love The Last Jedi, I feel like I'd rather see Rian Johnson be able to explore those ideas in a new trilogy, or they should have kept they were going to have a different director for each movie, and then they replaced J.J. Abrams with one of them. They should have kept that 3rd director, and then maybe we could have had the J.J. Abrams sandwich. J.J. Abrams is the bread, and Last Jedi is like the good meat inside, but it's like kind of a weird tasting meat. It's a little bit of an exotic meat. So not everybody's going to like it. Maybe it's fish or something. But some people are really gonna like it. They're gonna prefer it to like a chicken sandwich or a normal burger, but then they're gonna think the bread isn't up to snuff. But for some people, the bread's okay, but that's all it needs to be okay. It's the meat in the middle that's the problem. That's the analogy that I'm going with for how people view this new Star Wars trilogy. And even how I kind of view the new Star Wars trilogy, except I'm of the opinion that the meat is good and the bread is just kind of stale. Stale. I mean, that's literally something you call a movie, and it's also something you call bread. All right. Whatever, man. Do I want to talk about this movie anymore? Honestly, not really. I'm kind of bored of talking about it. I've already talked about it with too many people. People are going to be arguing about these freaking movies until the next trilogy comes out. And then they're going to keep arguing about them the way that people still argue about the prequels today. And it's just like, maybe that's what I meant when I said that Star Wars shouldn't be taken so seriously in my Last Jedi video. Maybe that's what I meant. I just meant that, like, come on. It's like, I mean, people don't talk about Marvel movies with this kind of fervor. People don't talk about Lord of the Rings with this kind of fervor. I can't think of any other blockbuster franchise like this that just gets debated with such fervor. And you could argue that's a testament to the quality of the movies, but I really don't think it is. I think it's more a testament to the just the divisiveness of the fan base. I don't know, man. Like, it's just like, I don't care that much about Star Wars that I want to go make 40-minute videos on how The Last Jedi ruined Star Wars, or how The Rise of Skywalker ruined The Last Jedi. It's just like, I don't care. I mean, I rant about it, but ultimately, like, it's just a movie. They're just movies, and they're like, as long as they're a fun time, I guess that's all I really care about. I would like them to have something deeper, and I feel like Last Jedi teases something deeper, but is unable to commit, probably because of being shackled with being the middle piece of a trilogy. I hope Rian Johnson's trilogy has the chance to explore something deeper and do some better world building, because the new trilogy has terrible world building. Like, the prequels, as bad as some of the scenes in the prequels are, as bad as the writing and direction is, they undeniably have far better world building. And that even the things they've led to, like spin-off shows and stuff, have furthered that world building in a way that we do not have for the new trilogy. But man, it's just like, I don't know. Star Wars. It doesn't. Oh yeah, and then let's just talk about the Rise of Skywalker. Rey is Palpatine's daughter now. I mean, okay, I kind of predicted it. I don't think Palpatine should have ever come back to begin with, but I already knew it was going to happen, so I had accepted it going in, and so that made me able to, like, not be pissed off about it. I think the opening sequence where Kylo hunts down the secret lair where Palpatine's body is being rebuilt is actually a super cool and genuinely, like, creepy sequence. I love that part of the movie. It's probably the most, like, a lot of the new trilogy, every new trilogy film has had very aesthetically interesting set pieces, like visually striking set pieces. That's been one consistently good thing throughout all three films, is they have that polish, I guess, that I feel like is not there in the prequels, and I mean, was there in the original trilogy for the time, but now it looks a little dated. But yeah, I mean, Rey's Palpatine's daughter, like, okay, sure, fine. I liked it better when she was a nobody. I really liked that plot there, but I always knew they were going to retcon that, because it was always something easy to retcon. You could just say Kylo was lying, or Kylo didn't know. And it's like, okay, whatever. So Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter. Alright, fine, she's a Palpatine, and so he tries to convert her, and then she stops him, and then she dies, and then Kylo uses all his Force energy to save her, and then Kylo dies. Wait, what? Kylo died? Frick off. Kylo should not have died. Kylo did not need to die. I say this in my Last Jedi review, that Kylo's arc Kylo is one of the most interesting characters. Scratch the one of part of that sentence. After seeing this trilogy, Kylo is the most interesting character. He may have been the antagonist for most of it, but it is his story. Rey never really grows as a character that much. Rey 3 movies in, I still don't think Rey has a personality. And I wonder if some of that is just Daisy Ridley. Like, I have to wonder if some of that is just Daisy Ridley's not that charismatic or interesting of an actress. There were some lines she had in Rise of the Skywalker where I was just like, you delivered that poorly. Adam Driver, on the other hand, is a great actor. All the fight scenes with him in this movie, I realize I'm like, they could give him the exact same material they give Rey, and he could sell it twice as better. Like, he's that good. And unlike with Finn and Poe, who are both played by great actors, but they're not given much to do after movie 1. I feel Finn especially gets shafted after movie 1. They just keep coming up with dumb plot lines for him that don't work. And it's like, just go back to the interesting thing you had for him in the first movie, where he was like the stormtrooper struggling with his identity. I don't know. Maybe the next trilogy will give them development. But honestly, do I even want to see another trilogy with Rey, Finn, and Poe? Not really. If they couldn't develop them into interesting characters in these 3 movies, why would I want to see another 3 movies with them? Kylo is the one I want to see more of, and they killed him off. Man. And they didn't need to kill him off. That was the thing. He falls in the pit at the end of the movie, and I go, and I was like, oh, Rise of Skywalker. He's going to come out of the pit. Rise of the Skywalker. And I was like, that's a little cheeky, but it's fun. But then he comes up to Rey, and it's just like this tender moment. So they kiss in the end of the movie, right? I thought for a second, because it was already kind of going into Disney-ish cliche, where it looks like the main character's dead. I thought for a second, I was like, please tell me they're not going to do this. They're not going to do this, right? Like, it almost seemed like he was going to wake her up by kissing her, which would have just been, like, absurd. I've seen a lot of people be upset about the Rey-Kylo kiss, but personally, the kiss didn't bother me because I was just so relieved that it wasn't the thing that he used to revive her. That they didn't go complete, full, like, Disney princess story and have the prince, Kylo, revive the princess Rey with the kiss. Like, that just would have been some Disney princess shit that does not belong in Star Wars. Compared to that, them kissing right before he dies after he saves her is like, whatever. I mean, I don't know if I'd really say... I feel like they had some romantic chemistry. I mean, I don't know if I would have, like, bought it as a long-term romance, but as this one fleeting kiss before he dies, sure, I guess. I had a much bigger issue with the fact that they killed him. Like, I'm like, you killed off by far the most interesting character in this trilogy. He's the only one with an arc. He goes from an antagonist to a hero. He goes from a villain to a hero, and every bit of it's interesting. The scene where he burst into Palpatine's lair and is like slicing up dudes, and then Rey puts her sword behind her back, and then it appears in his hand, and then he's fighting with her sword. Granted, for some reason, he gets rid of his sword before that scene. I mean, I guess it's a symbolic thing, but it kind of just felt like he got rid of his sword so they could have a cool moment where he used her sword. But whatever, it's cool. That's all I want. I don't demand that much out of Star Wars. I just want cool visuals and action sequences, and for the most part, the new trilogy gives those. I'm not sure why people are looking for super duper complex storytelling. I guess because the original trilogy had that, but I don't know. I feel like the original trilogy just didn't have that. Not to the extent people think it did. But that's a whole nother discussion that I already kind of went over in my Last Jedi review, and apparently people did not agree with that, or at least the one disliker did not agree with that. Where was I? Oh, yes. Kylo is awesome. And I was just like, man, that scene's so cool. I loved the thing. That was the one plot thread from Last Jedi, which I didn't mention in the Last Jedi review because I was trying to avoid spoilers because I thought I was going to do a big, long spoiler video that I never did. Kylo and Rey, their force bond where they communicate with each other from a distance and can, like, sense things around each other. That's the one cool thing from Last Jedi that this movie takes, ramps up, and uses in an interesting way. Every other cool thing about The Last Jedi is kind of thrown to the side, but the Rey-Kylo, like, force connection thing is expanded upon in really cool ways. There's a scene where they sword fight through the force connection, and there's, like, stuff being broken in both of their environments, and then, like, there's one scene where she sneaks onto his ship, and she's fighting with him. She's in his room. He's outside looking for her. What am I doing with my arms? He slices something, and it's like a pot, and it breaks in her room, but then it falls into the outside where he is, and so now he knows where she is, and then he sends somebody to go find her on the ship, and it's just like, I mean, if you think about it too much, the physics of it don't make a ton of sense, and there's a lot of, like, weird implications with it, but they get away with it because it's so cool. Like, it's cool, and it's like, it has this connection to the character narrative. It's not just a cool moment for the sake of a cool moment, which honestly, even if it was, that'd be fine enough for me. But it's not even that. Like, it's rooted in character, and the bond between those two characters is really interesting. I don't know if I would say it was romantic, but I wouldn't say it was aromantic. Like, even though they were fighting the whole time, they had this bond. I mean, Palpatine refers to it as a dyad. I don't know if that's some deep Jedi canon lore, but it's a really interesting, like, that was by far the most interesting part of the movie, and I feel like the one thing from Last Jedi that they actually carried over into this, explained, and evolved. Everything else was just kind of, I don't know, I'm already forgetting it all. The new trilogy is very safe. It's something I could go back and rewatch and have a fun time with, but, like, if anybody wants to seriously talk to me about it, I've said everything I have to say. Like, I think everyone has said everything there is to say. I'm getting recommended to me a 30-minute long Star Wars Rise of the Skywalker Nostalgia Critic review on YouTube, and I don't think that could possibly have anything new to say that hasn't already been said about these movies, because it's the Nostalgia Critic, and also because even if it wasn't the Nostalgia Critic, there's just not a lot to say anymore. Like, honestly, Rise of the Skywalker, it was fine. Just like Force Awakens was fine. Just like Last Jedi was mostly fine. Had like a third or a half of the movie that was great. There was a shimmer of greatness in Last Jedi that almost peeked its head out. It kind of peeked its head out. It looked around, and then it went back down. And now we're back to the standard Star Wars level. I think A New Hope or Force Awakens was more fun because it was the first movie. This just feels disappointing because it's the last. But at the same time, I can't even be that disappointed. They wrapped it up as cleanly as I think they could have possibly have after the previous two movies. Well, like, honestly, what more can you ask? These were always going to be a messy, incoherent trilogy. Let's hope the future Star Wars movies actually have someone planning them. Or, use the same director for all three movies. Or don't have an actress die when they've only recorded the first two movies, and then they have to reuse footage of her for the third one, and then kill her off in a dumb way in the third one. The way Leia dies in Rise of the Skywalker is lame. She uses her Force powers to contact Kylo. She stops him from killing Rey, but she adds nothing to his character development. And then they have to have, like, a weird, not forced ghost of Han Solo to talk to Kylo to, like, make it all contextualized. The more I think about it, the more of a messy movie it is. It's got some really, really cool set pieces. The thing in the trailer with the horses, I thought that was going to be lame. It's actually really cool. Where they ride the horses across the spaceship, like, they end up having a good reason for it in the script. The scene with the crashed Death Star in the ocean is cool. There's a lot of little stuff that doesn't make sense, and I guess that's why the critics blasted it. But overall, it's still Star Wars, and I enjoy the spectacle of Star Wars more than I enjoy the substance, maybe. I think is probably the best way to put it. And this movie's a lot of spectacle. Just like Force Awakens was a lot of spectacle. I feel like The Last Jedi had the spectacle, but it also had the substance, and it also had the really dull parts. It was like a Lucas prequel in that way. And am I ever going to rewatch it? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe someday I'll watch them all, and I'll do a video on them all. But after the Star Wars fervor has died down, and I can, feel like I can talk about them without, having the internet influence my opinions. I feel like the internet really influenced my opinion on Last Jedi. Influenced what I expected Rise of Skywalker to be. Where was I? I blanked out. I'm not going to edit these clips together because of it. The internet. The internet influenced what I expected Rise of the Skywalker to be. Cut back here. Maybe for the better. Because it I mean, I don't know. Like, it made me expect Rise of Skywalker to be a lot worse than it actually was, so I was still able to enjoy it. And I don't know. I don't know if these movies will hold up in the coming years. I can see them going a similar way to the prequels, where, like, defenders will come out of the woodwork when the next series of movies coming out, being like, this trilogy does this, but that trilogy was better because they did X thing better, and it's just like, oh, God, who cares about Star Wars drama? Prequels, originals, sequels, they all have their issues. The originals are pretty much the best. Nobody's really arguing against that, but it's just like, what do we have to argue about it? Just enjoy things. Just enjoy Star Wars. Just enjoy Christmas. Just enjoy the 2020s. Enjoy yourselves and have a Merry New Year's. I'll have a much more positive video coming probably tomorrow, because I'm lazy, on a superior film series. I'm running out of video space again. The superior series is the Shrek films. Arrivederci.